In the world of anime and manga, artists use several different tricks to differentiate characters from one another, especially when there are characters with similar characteristics like brothers, sisters, fathers, and sons. Now, the ways in which you can make a character look unique vary a lot. It could be the hair, it could be the clothing, it could be the eyes. The eyes are usually very important for the character design, but there are also facial features that change from character to character. Naruto has his whiskers, Itachi has his stress line, Madara has bags under his eyes, Kakashi has his scar. There are several different things you can do to make the characters unique, but there's one that's always been a little odd to me, and that will be Jiraiya's wart on his nose. Jiraiya is literally the only character with something like that in his design, a small little ball that pops off of his skin, and if you think about it, it really differentiates the character a lot in terms of appearance. I mean, Jiraiya already looks very different from everybody else in the entire show. His clothes are very unique, he has a very different headband, and also his hair is very special. White, long, spiky, and very different. But on top of that, the wart really differentiates Jiraiya, doesn't it? The character would feel weird if he didn't have that small little ball on his nose. And if you think about it, it's a very clever design because it doesn't take a lot of effort to draw that. It's just a little ball. Kishimoto can do that in 0.2 seconds, and it makes the character stand out. Ideally, design choices like that should not be made just to differentiate characters or just because they look cool. They should inform about the character's personality, history, and themes. For example, Naruto has his whiskers because he is literally different from everybody else. He has a demon inside of him, and therefore he has something very weird on his face. Those whiskers are not human. They are different. It implies the character has something else going on that nobody else does. Itachi's iconic stress lines imply the character's been through a lot of stress, wouldn't you know? He had to slaughter his entire clan, his parents, while lying to his brother and joining a criminal organization to protect the Leaf Village. That would leave a mark on you. Those marks symbolize Itachi as a character that suffers, a character that's been through a lot. The bags underneath Madara's eyes make the character feel more imposing. It feels like the character knows more than he's letting on, and it helps with Madara's arrogant and superior demeanor towards everyone. Kakashi's scar on his Sharingan eye also symbolizes something very different. It tells you, well, this eye doesn't belong to this man. It's something that he got along the way. It's literally not supposed to be there, hence the scar. And it's mysterious. Wait, how did Kakashi get it? What happened with the scar? What happened with Kakashi's eye? Why does he have a Sharingan if he's not an Uchiha? It makes the backstory of the character rich, and it just enhances the character itself because it's a great design choice. But let's reflect a little bit. What does the wart tell us about Jiraiya's character? That Jiraiya's old? Is that what the wart's trying to tell us? Well, Jiraiya's 50 years old when we first see him. That's definitely older than most of the Naruto characters, but it's not terribly old. Also, if you don't consider the wart, Jiraiya's appearance is very jovial. The only other design element on his face that makes him look a little bit older are the lines around the corners of his mouth, and that's pretty much it. The character doesn't look terribly old, and he's not even supposed to be. As a matter of fact, Jiraiya has a very young personality. He still has a lot of energy, he laughs a lot, and he has a general younger vibe than characters of his age. Of course, he is still wise, and he is a sage, but among the sages and of characters 50 or older, he definitely feels like the most jovial. So the wart feels a little bit out of place, doesn't it? This character that's generally very jovial and tries to be very energetic has this element to his design that just makes him look a lot older than he is. Take a look at Hiruzen, for example. He is the old sage of the story. His face is littered with wrinkles and dark patches, symbolize that yes, this character is very old, but he is very wise. Hiruzen is very different from Jiraiya in that regard. Jiraiya is the guy that's going to go and spy on girls taking a bath, and Hiruzen is the guy who's going to give missions and be wise. Of course, Hiruzen can get a little bit distracted when Naruto uses the sexy jutsu, but he's not gonna go peep on girls. And think about this for a second. A wart on your nose is something very undesirable, something that's generally thought to be unattractive. It's not something a character like Jiraiya would like to have on his nose. As a matter of fact, he would definitely not want to have that because Jiraiya is pretty much active with the ladies. He likes to seek them out, and Jiraiya would know that a wart is something generally seen as very unattractive. And you may say, well, but it just happens, man. He has a wart, what can he do about it? He can't really control that, it just pops out and wow, what can you do? Well, there are things you can do, especially a wart like that. It's not the hardest thing in the world to remove. The concept of surgery literally exists in the Naruto universe. Tsunade performed surgery on Rock Lee to remove micro pieces of sand imbued in his spinal cord, so I have to imagine that a surgery to remove a very superficial wart wouldn't be the most complicated thing for Jiraiya to seek out. Jiraiya is also one of the most affluent people in the world, not only because he's done a lot of missions and gotten a lot of money from them, but also he's the best-selling author of the most successful book series in the Naruto verse, Make Out Tactics. So it wouldn't be a problem for him to pay for a surgeon to remove the warts, and he could even ask Tsunade. I am sure she would do it for free, and she could probably take care of that in 2 seconds. Removing a wart would definitely improve your chances with the girls, wouldn't it? So Jiraiya would definitely seek that out. I mean, he literally abandoned Naruto knowing he was being actively hunted by the Akatsuki because a girl smiled at him, the girl Itachi put in the Rigenjutsu. So he definitely would go out of his way to remove a wart on the middle of his nose. A character that doesn't do that is a character that doesn't care about his appearance, and we see an example. Onoki has several warts on his nose, and he is much older than Jiraiya. He's like 30 years older than him. He's like 80. It makes sense for a character that's jaded, that doesn't really care about his appearance, that's only trying to gain the upper hand against his enemies, not to care about the warts on his nose. I mean, he's old already, whatever. And you could even say that Onoki also had the warts when he was young. He had them in the flashback with the first Tsuchikage, so it's something the characters had for a while. It's definitely a bit of an aesthetic problem with him, but you also have to understand that back in that day, technology wasn't as developed, and there probably weren't surgeons around. Also, Onoki is not the type of character that's gonna care as much about his appearance as Jiraiya would, because I have to reiterate that Jiraiya is always after the ladies. He literally goes out of his way not to use his Sage Mode because he looks ugly. He starts to look like a toad. The first thing Fukasaku tells Jiraiya when he summons him in the pain fight is that, oh, I'm surprised you're gonna actually use Sage Mode in this fight because you usually says, I don't want to do that because the girls don't like how I look. I mean, he looks like a toad, so it's understandable. So a character that chooses not to use a very strong amp just because he gets an ugly appearance is definitely going to go out of his way to remove a wart in the middle of his nose. It makes absolutely no sense for Jiraiya to have that. No sense whatsoever. It's a really dumb decision. But what if I told you that he does not have a wart? I know many people do not know this, but the Naruto anime has lied to you. The Naruto anime has committed a lot of mistakes. This one might seem a little bit minor, but it actually informs Jiraiya's character a lot. There's a reason why Kishimoto chose Jiraiya's design the way he did, and the anime just completely got it wrong. And the thing is that because most people don't even read the manga, you're just never going to know that Jiraiya does not have a wart. So I'm making this video because I'm pretty sure most of you think he does have a wart, and I just want to make sure you know what Jiraiya actually has on his nose. Now, if you just take a look at the original manga, black and white, it's gonna look the same as in the anime, because in the anime, the quote-unquote wart has the same color as Jiraiya's skin, implying that, well, it's an extension of Jiraiya's skin, right? So it's like a wart or something like that. And when you read the black and white manga, you would have the same impression because, well, Jiraiya's skin is white and the wart is also white. Kishimoto doesn't color, he just draws the outline and that's it. That's the character design. But everything changes when you see the colored version of the manga. Now, the colored version that I usually use in my videos is an official version released by Shonen Jump, so the colors in the character designs are official. But if you don't even trust that, take a look at the cover of volume 19 of the Naruto manga and take a look at Jiraiya's face there. Pay attention to his quote-unquote wart. What color is that? It's not Jiraiya's skin color, it's not even brown like a wart would be, because if it was supposed to be brown and a darker wart, Kishimoto would have definitely colored it in the manga a little darker than Jiraiya's skin tone. But the quote-unquote wart has a bright gray color. Yes, Jiraiya has a piercing on his nose and not a wart. Suddenly, everything makes sense now. Jiraiya, a character that's jovial, would be a type of character that would just put a piercing on his nose. He would want to be different, he would want to stand out with the ladies, so a piercing would help him out a lot. It's also a cool design choice for a character that wants to remain with that younger spirit. It informs a lot about Jiraiya's personality, about what he wants, his needs, what he is after, you know, the ladies and stuff. And it just makes the character much cooler than if he had a wart. It also makes an oddly interesting connection with his former student, Nagato, who uses a lot of piercing piercings on the pain bodies to control them. I mean, obviously the piercing doesn't have a practical function for Jiraiya, but it's a design choice that mirrors Pain's choices in design. And yes, the piercings that Pain uses are much more pronounced and extreme, but that's still a similarity. Also, when you look at the colored version of the Naruto manga, every time there's a close-up on Jiraiya's face, you see the very characteristic bright gray silverish color of a metal piercing on his nose and not a wart. So why did the anime make such a blunder? Yes, this may sound like nitpicking, but there is a big difference between the character having a wart or a piercing. These are opposite things. They tell you completely different things about the character if they have one or the other. And as they say, the devil lies in the details. Now, it's probably easier to color Jiraiya's skin without having to add a grayish point every time you draw his face. This probably saves some animation hours, but I can't think it's that hard. I mean, obviously we know that the more complicated a character design is, the harder it is to animate the character. That's why Naruto characters usually don't have a very intricate design to make it easier to animate them, because Kishimoto knew, well, the animation has to keep going. I have to help Studio Spear here. I can't make my characters look like armored guts or whatever. It's impossible to animate without using 3D. But just painting a small silver dot wouldn't be exactly difficult, would it? I mean, take a look at the eyes of the characters. They have different colors, they have different designs. The characters still move their eyes, so there would be no reason to save animation hours, quote unquote, in such a minute detail that they could just cover and it would just make the character look better. My theory is that the first time Jiraiya was introduced in the story, during the training arc of the Chunin exams, Kishimoto had never drawn Jiraiya in color yet. So Studio Spear just thought, oh, okay, this is a wart. It looks like a wart on Jiraiya's nose, so we're just gonna color it with Jiraiya's skin tone because that's what it looks like in the manga page. And they probably didn't ask Kishimoto about that, and Kishimoto probably didn't tell them because it's such a small detail that, well, we don't really have to bother the mangaka with such small details. It's obviously a wart, just make it a wart. Turns out that it wasn't a wart, and because they introduced the character with the wart design, they didn't retcon him into having a piercing afterwards. Or I don't know, maybe the director in Studio Spirit, whoever was introducing the Jiraiya back in the day, just thought a wart would look better than a piercing, which I just think would be the dumbest explanation possible. Getting confused? Sure, fine, that happens. You could think Jiraiya has a wart by just looking at the black and white drawing, but changing the character design from the mangaka's intention would just be stupid. Anyways, now you know that Jiraiya does not have a wart, he has a piercing on his nose, and this is very important Naruto lore and information. So if you've learned something new today, subscribe to this channel for more content just like this, and like this video to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. It really does help. Also, watch this other video right here, and thank you so much for watching, guys.